our family history project. And so Mrs. Catanasso and I are going to show you how to do the very first step, which is to conduct an interview with a family member. But there are a few things you need to gather before you can get started, and you also need to make sure you follow all of the steps to complete your interviews properly. So let's go over the materials that you're going to need and a list of steps that you need to complete to conduct your interviews. Before you get started with anything at all, we've got some tips for you. So the first thing is to consider practicing how to read the questions out loud ahead of time. That way, as you're conducting your interview, you don't stumble through words that you don't recognize, and you can ask your questions really fluently. The second thing to consider is reviewing the family interview sheet with an adult. That way, if you don't recognize any words, an adult can help you read them properly. And also, if you have any questions about the questions, your family member can help you out. The third thing to consider is choosing a family member who knows a lot about your family's history. So talk with your parents about who's an expert on your family. Is it an aunt? Is it an uncle? Is it a grandparent? Decide with your family who you think would be the best person to interview. Before you actually get to conduct your interview, you have to complete step 1, which is to make a few choices. So the first choice you have to make is deciding who will you interview. The second choice you have to make is how will you take notes? Will you record your interview on an audio recording? This would be our recommendation because if you have an audio recording, then that means that you can go back as many times as you need to and want to listen to your interview all over again. That way, when you're sitting down to work on your scripts, if you forget any details, you always have that audio to go back to listen to again later on. Or will you take handwritten notes? Or will a parent or grown-up help you record your answers down on paper? That's your choice. The third thing you need to decide is when can you schedule your interview? What time and day works for you and the family member that you're interviewing? Once you've completed step 1, that means that you're ready for step 2, which is to gather your materials. Now, depending on the choices that you've made, you may not need everything on this list. But no matter what choices you make, every single one of you is going to need the family history interview sheet. So make sure you have that so that you know which questions to ask. You may need a recording device or a couple of them if you're choosing to record an audio version for your notes. You may need a pencil, some extra paper, and maybe even an adult if you're going to take some handwritten notes. Remember, you can ask a grown-up to help you write down notes so that they're really detailed because, let's be honest, some of us are a little bit slow at writing and listening at the same time. So having a grown-up there to do some speed notes might be super helpful for you, and that is totally okay with Mrs. Catanasso and I. After you've completed step 2, which was to gather all of your materials, you're ready for step 3, which is to conduct your interview. So at the start of your interview, don't forget to click start on your recording device. That way you can take your audio recording. Then remember to do the interview introduction, which you can find at the very top of your family history interview sheet. Remember to ask every single question. And then at the end, make sure that you say thank you to the family member that you've interviewed because they've taken time to sit down and talk to you. So be sure to thank them for their time. Next, Mrs. Catanasso and I are going to model how to do the entire interview process. So you're going to see me as grandmama, and Mrs. Catanasso is going to be my granddaughter, and we're going to walk through each of the steps that I just outlined for you so that you know exactly what your interview should look like.
Hi, Gammy! How are you? It's so good to see you, Gammy. Thank you for helping me with my school project. I'm going to interview you all about our family history. I'm so excited to learn more about you and myself. Thank you, Gammy. Are you ready? Okay, I'm going to record our interview so that I can listen to it later to help me with the rest of my project. I'm going to record us on the computer, but just in case it doesn't work, Gammy, I'm also going to use voice memo on my phone so that I can have more than one recording, just as a backup. Are you ready? Hi, my name is Lizzie, and today I'm interviewing my grandmother. Her name is Gammy Ali. Okay, Gammy. First question. Gammy, when is your birthday?
Oh, Lizzie, my birthday just passed. I turned 72 this year. It's on January 20th, 1948.
I knew that. Gammy, in what city and country were you born?
Oh, Lizzie, I was born in Cairo, Egypt, and trust me when I say you need to go back and visit. It is a beautiful city, such a beautiful country.
So cool. Where did you grow up, Gammy?
Oh, I was born, yes, in Egypt, but I did grow up most of my life here in America. We moved from Cairo here to San Francisco Bay Area, and I've lived here my entire life since I was 2 years old, Lizzie.
I didn't know that. Gammy, who did you grow up with?
Lizzie, you would have loved them. I grew up with my mother and my father, and I had my two sisters who I believe you've met them maybe last year at our family reunion, if I recall correctly. And then there was my brother, who I believe you also met last year at our family reunion in Florida.
And what were their names?
Well, my mother was Dina, and my father was Yusuf. I believe that was a family name, and my older sister is Sarah, and then there's Elizabeth, who, of course, you are named after. We don't call her Lizzie, but your name is Elizabeth, just like my sister. And then there's my brother Yusuf, and he got the family name passed along, Yusuf, like my father. Also my brother's name.
Oh, wow. I don't know all of those people, Gammy. Can you describe what they were like and what it was like to grow up with them?
Oh, yes. My mother and my father were so very kind and patient. They were just the most kind, patient people that I can remember. And they worked hard, and they were very smart, and they always taught us to do our best and to work our very hardest like they always did. And even if it was just tidying up the house, and we had to do our very best cleaning that we could, and we each had a job. Mine was to get the broom and sweep up the floors, and my brother, he did the dishes, and my sister was in charge of the laundry, and my other sister did some mopping, and my brother would do some of the grocery shopping. So we each had a job to do in our home, and we did our very best because that's what our parents always taught us to do. And I think that is a lesson I have brought with me in my entire life. Into everything that I do. And my sisters and I have always been very close. They were very different from each other, but they were both very smart, very creative. My brother loves to cook. He still does. He always has. He's definitely the chef in our family, and he was always cooking, maybe also because he loves to eat. I don't know. And we were never hungry in our home, thanks to my brother. He always had something in the oven, something on the stove. We spent lots of time together as a family. It was a very nice childhood.
Gammy, why did you choose to come to America? And what year was it?
Lizzie, I have asked the same question many times because, as I explained to you earlier, I was just a baby when we left Egypt, and so I think I must have been just two years old when we came over. So I guess that means it was 1950, just about. And then it was just my mother, my father, Sarah, my older sister, and myself, of course. And we came to America to be closer to our family. Lots of my parents' siblings had already come to the United States, so we followed.
Oh, wow, that was a long time ago. What feelings did you have about coming to America? Were you excited or were you kind of scared?
Oh, Lizzie, I was so young, too young, I suspect, to have many feelings about it. But I grew up and I knew that my parents, they missed our home. They talked about Egypt all the time, but we went back and forth to visit a handful of times, not often because it was very expensive, but we did go back a couple of times, and I knew that my family was very happy to be here in America, and I grew up very happy to be here too.
How did you get here? Did you have to take a plane? Did you have to take a boat? Did you drive a car?
I do remember this very vaguely because I was quite young when we made the journey over to America, but I have memories of the airplane and remember thinking that it was very big. It was maybe one of the biggest things, at least as a child, I thought I had ever seen in my whole life. And my parents had saved for months to buy our tickets to come to America because it was very, very expensive those days to fly on an airplane. Believe it or not, it's hard to believe it now because you can buy flights for $60, $70, but not then in the 50s. Long ago, it was much more expensive, so had to plan ahead, and my family did just that.
Wow, that must have been a long journey, Gammy. Gammy, what was your childhood like? What were you like as a little girl?
Well, my childhood has some of my favorite memories. I loved playing with my brother and my sisters, and like I said, my brother did so much cooking. We ate a lot. My sisters and I loved playing with paper dolls. You would get a booklet and came with the doll and you had to punch it out and it perforated edges, and then each booklet came with some outfits that you could use to dress your dolls, and that kept us busy for hours. And sometimes we even tried to make our own, but they never fit just right. You could never attach those tabs just as you could with the ones that you purchased from the store. And we loved reading comic books together. My brother always bought them and then let us read them at night before bed. And when we were a little bit older, we had movie nights at the drive-in movie theater, and that was one of my favorite things to do. And I still have movie nights even now because I have such fond memories of going to the drive-in theater with my family.
Wow, so cool. I like that too. Gammy, thinking about the world we live in today in 2020, how has life changed over time?
Well, Lizzie, that is a big question with so many answers. I bet if you asked many older people like myself, we would each have a different response, but lots of things are very different, but there's still some things that are quite the same, or at least a little bit similar. Now, of course, there's all the technology, and growing up, I always thought that the televisions and telephones were so advanced, but now I can hardly even operate my television. I have 3 remotes, Lizzie. Can you believe it? 3 remotes. And the internet has made things very different too. We used to spend a lot of time reading in the library and doing research, and now we just type in words to Google and it finds all of our answers for us. And I think today in 2020, people are just so much busier and they have so many big dreams, and we had big dreams then too, but And there are different kinds of dreams now because of the times, and I would say that that's probably the biggest change that I've noticed.
Wow. Gammy, I learned so much today from talking to you.
Lizzie, I'm so glad that we had this time to talk about our family history. It's so important for you to know what has happened in our family's history and to know where our family comes from. And it's very important for us to pass that information along to you because it can get lost along the way. So I'm very happy that I had this opportunity.
Thank you so much for helping me with my school project. Next, I'm going to turn our interview into a play all about our family history. Do you want to see it when I'm finished?
Oh, Lizzie, that would be so spectacular to see your play when you are all finished with it. Maybe you can do a screen share, mirror move on your device or, whatever you call it. That would be very nice, Lizzie, a Friday night movie night.
Awesome! I'll send it to you, Gammy. All right, Gammy, I love you. I miss you so much. Thank you again. Bye, Gammy.
Whoa, what a great interviewer Mrs. Catanasso is, or should we say Lizzie? Now, you might have been watching that interview with Lizzie and her granny, and you might have been thinking, but Miss Garcia, Mrs. Catanasso, my family has lived in America for as long as we know. And if that's your situation, that's awesome. But in that case, that just means you're going to have to skip a page. This page, in fact. So, when it's time to do your interview and to prepare your materials, you're just going to remove this page altogether. So the page that says Act 2, and it has the following questions. Why did you choose to come to America, and when did you come? Who came along with you to America? What feelings did you have about coming to America? And how did you get to America? If your family has been in America all this time, then these questions just aren't going to fit into your family's story. So do not worry about them. Just remove Act 2 altogether. Now that you have all of the information that you need, it's your turn to head over to Google Classroom so that you can get started with your assignment. Now, today, you are going to be working on steps 1 and 2. So that means that you're going to gather all of your materials and you're going to make sure that you have set up an interview with a family member. If you're ready to start your interviews today, you definitely can, keeping in mind that your interview is due tomorrow, Tuesday, May 19th, at the end of the day. So, all of the steps and materials are outlined for you on Google Classroom, so you will find your assignment there. If you're in Mrs. Catanasso's class, head over to Mrs. Catanasso's Google Classroom. If you're in my class, you're heading over to our Google Classroom. We are super excited to hear how your family interviews go, and we can't wait to work on the next steps with you tomorrow. Have fun!